How's it going, everyone? This is DoctorJefe, and welcome to another Crusader Kings 3 tutorial. In this video, we're going to be continuing our series on Dread. Now, last time we looked at acts that you can perform to gain Dread, namely torturing, executing, and imprisoning people. Today, we're going to look at perks and traits which affect your Dread score. And in the next video, we'll look at the benefits of Dread, namely intimidating and terrifying people. Now, before we begin the video, disclaimer that this video was set up using debug mode, and a reminder not to load any Iron Man saves if your game is in debug mode. Also, a shout out to the Paradox Wiki for information about perks and traits. Now, before we look at any specific perks or traits, there's a couple basic concepts about Dread that I want to talk about. Namely, there's natural dread. So this is a number that is modified by certain perks or traits that your character may have. And this is the number that you will tend towards over time based on your dread decay rate. So since this character is below his natural dread of 25, he's currently at 0, his dread decay rate will be positive. He will tend towards this 25. If he was over it, say at 100 dread, he would have a negative dread decay rate. Now, dread decay is typically at 0.5 if you have no modifiers. This character has no dread decay modifiers. His natural dread is plus 55, so he will have a positive 0.5 dread decay rate. This character does have some modifiers, which we'll look at, which has increased his dread decay rate to be plus 1.25. If his dread was over 25, we would see negative 1.2. Finally, there's dread gain and dread loss modifiers, which we'll look at towards the end of the video. Now to look at personality traits. So these are typically 3 traits that you can get. You can educate children and have some effect on these certain personality traits. Also note that certain personality traits are incompatible, such as compassionate is incompatible with callous or with sadistic. You cannot have a compassionate sadistic person. It doesn't work. Same way you can't have a brave craven person. So this character has a couple different personality traits which affect dread. The first is calm, which increases dread decay by plus 50%. So your typical plus 0.5 would now go to plus 0.75 dread decay if you were below your natural dread score. Vengeful increases dread gain by 15%. So when you're torturing, executing, imprisoning people, instead of getting that base value, those base values we talked about in the last video, you're getting that plus another 15%. Arbitrary causes natural dread to be plus 15. So characters will typically have natural dread at 0. This character has his natural dread of plus 15. Paranoid, dread gain plus 25%. Compassionate, natural dread minus 15 and dread decay plus 100%. That's why this character has a 1.2 dread decay rate. It's actually plus 100%, so 0.5 plus another 0.5 plus goes to 1, and then plus another 0.25. We see that it doesn't go past the first decimal point, so we're only seeing plus 1.2. If we look at the spouse, she has some other traits. Wrathful and calm don't go together, so that's why they're on this spouse, not on this character. I would like to put them all together on one person, but we have to spread them out. Wrathful gives you natural dread of plus 20. Callous gives you dread gain of plus 25% and a dread decay of minus 25%. And sadistic gives you natural dread of plus 35. If you notice that your spouse and child don't have dread, that's because rulers are people who can have dread. Your spouse, children, no dread allowed. Next, we can look at congenital traits. Similar to how this character has these 2 congenital traits, albino gives natural dread of plus 15, and scaly gives a natural dread of plus 10. So congenital traits are traits that can be inherited and passed down to your children. Next, we can look at physical traits. So these are traits that your character can gain. Typically, these ones will be gained through battles, such as one-eyed, which gives you natural dread of +10, and one-legged, which gives you natural dread of -10. Next will be the lifestyle traits. So these are traits that can be gained by going through the lifestyle tree. Torturer is the one that gives you dread gain +50%. Now we'll be seeing more about this lifestyle trait and the Torturer lifestyle tree. The next will be criminal traits. So these are traits that are usually kept secret, such as adulterer, murderer. The trait that gives you dread is cannibal, which gives you a natural dread of +20. That kind of makes sense. There's also coping mechanism traits. So these are traits you can gain when your stress levels increase. These are things that you can do usually to decrease stress. Irritable causes dread gain of +10%. Finally, there is health and illnesses. So you can get wounded, you can have certain diseases. Typically, these will give you a natural dread penalty. So you see natural dread -10 and a dread loss of 100%. Now, to look at dread loss a little bit more, we can switch our character over to, say, the Count of Yaroslav. And if we were to release a prisoner, this is a typical way of losing dread. If you just release him without any, banishing, gaining weight cooks, you lose dread. So if you release a prisoner, typically you lose 10 dread. However, if we were injured for some reason, which increases the dread loss by 100%, if we were to just release this prisoner, we would lose 20 dread. This is how you can see the 100% dread loss doubles the amount of dread that we lose by releasing a prisoner. Finally, there's another trait you can gain, Greatest of Cons, which gives you +50 natural dread and -25% dread decay. Now, we will look at the perks in the lifestyle trees, which can affect your dread score. We'll switch over to the character of Ryazan for that. So typically you're going to find most of the dread perks in the martial and intrigue lifestyles. However, in diplomacy, under August, in firm hand, you can see that monthly prestige per dread, you can gain a positive modifier. So if you had 100 dread, you could actually be doubling the amount of prestige that you would gain. In the martial lifestyle, we can see that authority focus increases the amount of dread you gain by 20%. Also, going down the overseer tree, having served the crown gives you a natural dread of +15. A very good perk to gain, since it's only on level 1. You don't have to go very far down the skill tree to grab this. Also, there is Hard Rule, which gives you a +20% to your dread gain. And since typically you have to keep a focus for 5 years, it may be worthwhile just to go down this martial tree to gain these 3 perks if you're going for a dread build. Under Stewardship, in the Avaricious lifestyle tree, under Fearful Troops, you can get a men-at-arms maintenance per dread -0.50%. So if you had 100 dread, you could be paying 50% less for your men-at-arms. In the Intrigue focus, specifically under the Intimidation and Torturer tree, this is really where you're going to be seeing a lot of dread. And this is actually the tree that is really built around dread. Choosing the Intimidation focus gives you natural dread of +30, one of the hugest boosts there is. So not all of these perks affect dread, but we're going to go down the whole Torturer tree and talk about how each of these perks can affect dread. So Dark Insights. When you torture someone, now torturing typically can gain you dread, 50% chance to gain 1 intrigue or 1 prowess. Dreadful, dread gain +30%, very straightforward. Divine Retribution, you do not lose piety or clergy opinion from torturing or executing others. Now typically, as in the last video I showed you, normally pay 100 piety to torture someone or execute someone. Now you can do it for free, not losing piety. That is a pretty big perk if you're concerned about piety, which you're going to want if you want to declare a lot of holy wars. Thriving in chaos, martial intrigue prowess per stress level. Not really related to dread. Malice implicit, dread gain per tyranny plus 0.5. So let's actually look at the math of that. So if we go to our prisoners, you can see we start off with 0 dread. If we were to execute this person, we gain 18 dread. Now this is because we have a bonus basically giving us plus 80% dread. Typically we'd only gain 10 from killing a lowborn, but we're getting plus 8 from this. Now this is also an act of tyranny causing subjects to lose 10 opinion. Basically this is gaining us 10 tyranny. Now, doing the math, we would also gain 5 dread from this because of the 0.5 dread gain from the perk that we have. Let's just go back to it, look at it again. Malice implicit, dread gain per tyranny, 0.5. So we'll multiply this by 50%. So remember though that that 5 is going to be multiplied by 80%, which is going to give us 9 more dread. So a total of 27 dread for executing a lowborn, which gives us tyranny. So let's see if our math's correct. 27 dread. Now if we're to execute this other prisoner who doesn't have any tyranny, we should only gain the 18 dread, putting us up to a total of 45. And hey, the math works out. Thank goodness. So finishing up the torturer skill tree, fear tax, intimidated and terrified vassals will give you more taxes as well as levies. We'll talk more about intimidation and terrifying vassals in the next video. Forever infamous, dread decay minus 1000%. So this basically removes all dread decay. And as you can see for this character, their dread is not moving. Now this is a positive if you have dread higher than your natural dread, which this character currently has. But if your natural dread was at 25 or maybe even higher, maybe you had a natural dread of 55, your dread wouldn't actually tick up. So while typically this is really good because you don't have to worry about your dread ever coming down from 100, there's possibly some ways it could be bad if you were below your natural dread. Just something to keep in mind. Prison feudal complex increases the imprisoning chance, which allows you to gain more tyranny, more people to torture, more people to execute. Finally, torturer. This gives you an increased dread gain of plus 50% as well as other benefits. So this will do it for the dread tutorial on perks and traits. Hopefully you guys know a little bit more about the different modifiers that can affect your dread score. And in the next video, we'll look at what this has all been leading to. Why do you want to have high dread? And is it really powerful? Sneak peek, it is super powerful. Alright, till next time, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please use the information to become a terrifyingly horrifying ruler. And as always, do remember to take care of yourself.